The following is a presentation of Project Independence and WCWP. Project Independence is the Aging in Place initiative of the town of North Hempstead.
Welcome to Project Independence and You.
Good morning and welcome to Community Talk Radio. This is Project Independence and You on LIU Public Radio. I'm your host, Kristina Liu, along with co-host Otto Los, who is friend, supporter, all-around PI ambassador, and my favorite co-host. Thank you for being with me this morning. And we have Gregg Balbera, who is the owner and certified senior advisor of Right at Home Nassau, Suffolk, and we're going to be talking about a very timely, important topic, which is long-distance caregiving, a checklist for holiday visits. Welcome to the show, Gregg.
Thank you for having me, as always.
Yes, it's great to, we were saying you always have such important articles, and I love when I get them in my email and I recommend everyone definitely signs up for these because they're so important. And I think, this caregiver thing, piece of living out of the state and around the holidays, you don't know what goes on, right? And I think you don't know what to look for. And when you see people, I know from my own family, you haven't seen them in a while, and then you're like, oh, I didn't notice this, or, things that unless you're in person, you would never really notice, so.
There's not too many families that are spared somewhere along the line caregiving.
Yeah.
And my belief is the more you learn about it from people like Gregg along the way, you might be better prepared to handle tough stuff when it happens. And
because I think caregiving, too, it could be such a, it's a scale, right? So even my own family, there could be someone that doesn't have such extreme needs, but it might notice something a little different, so I love that we love a checklist on the show. We're very big on checklists, right, Otto? That's kind of our thing. That's me. Otto, I sweet spot.
What's interesting is before getting your checklist, all right, I did my AI chat GPT thing, and it's really an amazing tool. It really is.
That's absolutely. More and more people are adapting AI and utilizing it for absolutely
Yes, well, I definitely want to go into that.
I basically asked the question, what about long-distance caregiving and what should you do during the holidays? And I got a whole long
prepared.
answer, really.
Yeah, so let's dive in. So what are the top things that, you come back, everyone, the holidays are, rapidly approaching, and you come back, what do you look for,
Sure. So first of all, what I would start off by saying is, AARP did a study a couple of years ago, and unlike, 30 or 40 years ago, where many times family, children, spouses, aunts, uncles lived nearby, same towns, or we lived in cities and they were in the same building or the building next to us. These days, the average adult child lives 280 miles from their parent.
Wow.
So in many cases, those children are only seeing their parents maybe once or twice a year. So I think that's important to realize. So, I think the big thing is when you are coming home for that visit, the big things to look for certainly are physical health and safety. So a lot can change in a year. If you're only visiting your parents around Thanksgiving or Christmas time, that once a year, what's with their mobility and balance? Are you noticing that their gait is off, that they're struggling just to walk? Are they having challenges getting up and down from a chair? Those are a couple of things to kind of take note of. Do you see any bruises or injuries that would indicate that maybe they had a fall? Many times seniors can be very, very independent and private, and they don't want to let their children know that they're having issues, because if they do, they know their children are going to start to get involved and make recommendations, and maybe they don't want that to happen, even though it would be for their benefit. So definitely looking for, indications of falls is important. Medication management is a big thing. Checking if medications are organized and being taken as prescribed. If you open up the medicine cabinet, are you seeing that vials are full? They're not being utilized, or they're expired. Those are certainly things to look for.
I know. I think that's so huge. Because it's just a personal story. One of my best friend and her mom lives in Florida. She lives here. And she went, and her mom has been having cognitive issues, and she could tell over the phone and stuff, and And what she also knows on top of that when she went to visit her was this medication. And she was on like so many things. And she's like, Mom, like, do you need to be on this? You know, these kind of things, you know, because she's in the field. So she realized, you know, like that a lot of these medicines can be impacting one another, and it's so important. Her mom was like, oh no, I've just been on it for years, you know, so it's one of those like, I'm just going to take it because I've just taken it, you know, forever.
So actually a great place to start there, and I always advise people, is you should be talking to your pharmacist.
Yeah.
Because most people, you know, especially seniors who probably are seeing, you know, more doctors than maybe people who are younger than them, a lot of times the doctors aren't talking to each other. Well, hopefully we're getting to a point with the electronic medical system, and now there's more sharing going on. But even with that, still, a lot of times the doctors are not really, you know, concerned with what other doctors are prescribing and whatnot. And as you just said, a lot of medicines don't play nicely in the sandbox together. So by asking the pharmacist, a lot of times the pharmacist will say, you know what, they probably should be doing this proactively, but sometimes it takes that questioning of them to say, hey, you know, my mom's now taking 10, 11 different medications. Can you just do a quick review of this, or the things that maybe they shouldn't be taking at the same time because they could be having a negative impact? And sometimes certain medicines, especially if they're being taken together, that can cause cognitive impairment.
And that's exactly, and that, you know, she was thinking was exacerbating, you know, what was going on, because it seemed so, you know, erratic, and it was, you know, largely part of that, which is just.
Gregg, I'd like to go back a notch, all right? Several, you've been on our show, I think 5 or 6 times, and one of the things that really registered with me back then was this need for a care plan. And if it's long distance caregiving, it seems to me that that plan is probably even more critical than if you're right next door, because you can't see everything. I'm saying that this is like pre-visiting. Your thought about the caregiving, you know,
Absolutely.
the care plan.
You know, the care plan is certainly essential. I mean, you know, from my perspective, our business right at home, I mean, that's the, you know, the fundamental tenet of what we do, right? We take that initial inquiry call from a potential client, from their loved one, the client themselves, a friend, whoever's making that initial phone call. We gather quite a bit of information. From there, we send both either or we have a full-time RN on staff, we have a full-time social worker on staff. So one of them, if not both of them, will go visit the client and the family. You really need to be able to drill down and find out what's going on. It's not just also in the moment. You want to find out a little bit of the back history, what's been going on for the last 3 years, the last 5 years, 10 years. A lot of that is the building blocks to building that care plan. And then, of course, you know, implementing that care plan is so important. And, you know, sometimes that care plan doesn't require in-home care assistance today. It may in the future. But once we have been entertained to, you know, brought in to, you know, be part of that process with that family, we're constantly, you know, making sure that care plan is where it has to be. And care plans change all the time. And that can be, you know, every 3 months, every 6 months, a year. Again, it just kind of depends. If a person has Alzheimer's or some other form of dementia, vascular dementia, if they have Parkinson's, diseases like this are progressive. So we know that over time, the need for the care plan to be updated and changed and modified is an absolute must. So one of the things that we do at Right at Home is when our caregivers clock out from their shifts, they're given the opportunity to, you know, not only, you know, check off all the tasks that they did for that client that day, personal care, meal preparation, med reminders, but there's a section in there for change in condition. So if the caregiver is noticing changes in condition, you know, client is losing weight, client seems more confused, client is getting more repetitive. Again, we mentioned Parkinson's earlier, you know, so if a client, tremors seem to be more, they're locking up more than they were previously. That information comes directly to our office. That's when we in the office, you know, we'll get our nurse involved, our social worker, our scheduling team. We reach out to the family. We're saying, you know, we're going to let them know, hey, you know, this is what our staff is seeing. You may want to have your parent, you know, follow up with their primary care physician. This might be an opportune time. We're seeing things. We need to maybe change medications, behaviors, whatever it might be. So, you know, the change in condition is very super important.
Now you have, if I recall correctly, you have on your website some thinking tools, if you will, to think about what might be in a care plan. And I remember you had some sort of checklist.
Yeah.
Absolutely, yes. If you go to our website, which is www.rightathomeli.com, there's many different tools.
Yeah, a bunch of free tools that you
Yep,
just download right on there.
Well, I mean, it strikes me like the topic that we're focusing on here is long-distance caregiving. And if you really don't have any idea what the care plan is, you might as well, it's you're trying to visit like it's just a social visit, but it's really not. You really have to see, if you live with somebody who's going through process, it's like a quarter of an inch a day.
Yeah.
But if you're somebody who visits every 6 months, you're going to see a difference.
100%, yeah.
Related to the care plan.
Yeah.
No, it's so true, because it's like even like not just life in general, right? You see you haven't seen your grandkid, in a while, and you're like, oh my God,
They grew 3
right,
inches.
exactly.
Whereas if you live with them,
you're like,
they grow a
exactly,
smidget of an inch
Right.
every day, and you don't even see it.
No, and you're more involved in the day to day, and that's why it is so important to have as much that you could possibly plan for, and I was looking through, we have like our circle of support is like a tool we have at Project Independence that you could fill out, and it's really a thinking tool also, like who do I call in this circumstance? Who is, so it's trying to, have some kind of level of preparedness. And I think you hit the nail on the head, Gregg, is, especially when you don't live in the home, it's even more important to have these tools because, you need the senior needs to know who am I going to call in all these different situations that may arise.
And not just the senior, it could be
Exactly,
it could be the spouse, or it could be you.
Right.
Listen, we take care of people where the senior's still living at home by themselves, and again, they could have 2-3 children, but none of them are in New York. But if something arises, they need to know, if they don't have a home care agency like us to call, they need to know, okay, well, who am I going to call? In specific situations.
That's a good point too. I read in the notes here, make sure if you are going to visit somebody and you're a long distance caregiver, I think you have to make sure that whoever is needing the care knows what to do if they're capable of doing it, or the aide is capable, whoever they may be. They hopefully would be from right at home, but they really have to have like a list that says, call here, do this, do that. And if you're not taking care of that, then it becomes like a panic when something happens.
Yeah.
I often say that when we get phone calls, it's almost always an emergency situation.
I know.
Like when we get calls, people are
Us
like,
too.
I need care like today, tomorrow at the latest. I kind of compare it to car shopping, right? When people want to go car shopping, they're like, okay, well, my lease is up in 3 months, so this week I'm going to go look at a GM, next week I'll go look at a Ford, the weekend after I'll go look at a Volvo, and then I'm going to think about it and I'm going to make a decision. But when people call us, it's like, okay, I need help
now.
right now, and
Well,
there's
we
really
talked about offline before the show, frankly, about an experience that I've seen where somebody has a sundown experience because of dementia. And it's all of a sudden, I'm looking from afar, but I'm involved a little bit because they're longtime friends. And okay, now what? And frankly, I suggested they call you, all right? And the reason being, all of a sudden you're in a situation, and when somebody, like in one moment, snaps and they have a problem and they start physically going after family members and whatnot, how do you handle that? I don't know if you can be prepared for that.
But it's tough to be prepared for that for sure, but there are certain steps that you can take to kind of lay out the groundwork for what you need to do.
Yeah, I think you have to research your options, and what works best for you, because a lot of these things, you have to see are financial, does insurance cover, and like Otto, when you said and you're the king of just preparing and seeing kind of beforehand
you don't want to be prepared for a situation like this, but it could be something else. It could have been some other instant issue.
The good news is there are many experts out there, not just right at home.
Yeah,
I mean, we will obviously,
for
people who aren't prepared, hopefully we can really be that source, that encyclopedia of go-to resources. But there are many other, excellent resources here on Long Island. So Project Independence obviously is a great one, just to mention off the bat, where, the people can get pointed in the right direction.
Yeah, I think then the answer to the question is you don't have to be prepared, but you should at least have a couple names of people to contact in case something goes wrong.
No, because it's like with anything in life, and this is what we always try to say. The show, no matter what topic we're talking about, always somehow goes to preparedness, right? Whether it's your home, you want to know, okay, if I have a plumbing problem, you don't want to be in that moment, because I've certainly been there. Like, oh my God, who do we call? So
We've all had a plumbing problem.
you want to have that list. Say, okay, I can have a couple of options. So I think, the point is, listen, we're never all going to have it figured out or planned, and we wish we will. I know I certainly wish I can all the time. But, I think it alleviates so much if you at least have it narrowed down and have thought about these, possibilities.
Well, we always talk about planning, and if you get right down to it, thinking about the long distance issue, before you go to visit, and you're in Seattle, Washington, and you're going to go to, Long Island, you really have to really think about what are you going to do when you get there.
Yeah.
Make a list, if you will.
Yeah.
Like we
Right.
write checklists, all right? Make a list, check bills, or they, check whatever.
Sure. Yep, absolutely.
So before, of course, we veer off because there's so much to talk about. We were talking about medication management, and I think you certainly gave us our golden nugget, which, was really talking to the pharmacist.
Yep.
And then I know, obviously, eating habits is a topic.
Nutrition and hydration is another one that I think is huge. So when people come home, again, they haven't been home in a year, perhaps, or 6 months. I think one of the first things you want to do is definitely
Open that fridge.
Open that fridge door, check out that kitchen. That can be a window into exactly what's going on. We've had examples where people will call us and be like, Dad, Mom and Dad kept the kitchen was, impeccable. The fridge was always stocked. And now I came home and the first thing I opened up and there's milk in there that's been expired for 3 months, and there's expired cheese, and the fruit that's in the thing is rotting, and there's really no real, and whereas the fridge was normally completely filled with healthy options, there's barely anything in the fridge to eat at all. And on top of which, Dad, it looks like he's dropped 30 pounds. So, that's an absolute gateway into what's going on. And oftentimes with that also what comes is hydration, because oftentimes people stop drinking a lot. So a lot of medical conditions can be precipitated by if someone is not drinking enough. So dehydration is one of the quickest ways to land.
It really is, and I'm and I cannot stress that enough to all of our listeners. My family makes fun of me because I'm just yelling at everyone all the time to stay hydrated, because I've seen it, right? For people of all ages, I've seen the ramifications of, and once you hit that dehydration, it's very hard to come back unless you get an IV or something, But my mom, for example, she's going to be 70 years old, still works and everything, but is terrible at staying hydrated. And she's blessed that I live downstairs from her, so I could yell at her on the regular. But we were getting prepared for Thanksgiving, and she's like, her stomach was bothering her, and she felt all achy. And I was like, Mom, have you had any water at all today? And she's like, no, I just keep forgetting. So I filled up, her giant Stanley cup, and I was making her take sips throughout it. And you saw it, she's like, it made her pretty quickly start to feel better, and it's just, I want everyone to, even in the cold weather, it's still super important. I think, when it's hot out, we're more inclined to certainly stay hydrated, but it's equally as important now.
All right, you're upstairs, your mother's upstairs, you're downstairs, so you can kind of lean in on it, all right? I'm in Seattle, Washington.
I know.
And you're in Levittown.
I know.
All right. Two things that come to mind is, one, we talked about medication management, which from a perspective of this doesn't work with that, but how do I make somebody take their medication when I'm in Seattle? How do I make somebody
We can
drink
definitely talk about
water?
that.
Well, Otto, you're going to have to wait till after our break. We're going to continue talking with Gregg Balbera, owner and certified senior advisor, right at home, Nassau, Suffolk, all about long-distance caregiving, a checklist for holiday visits. You're listening to Project Independence and You on LIU Public Radio.
WCWP is your home for great music and great conversation. You'll find all that and more on WCWP.org. Listen live on the web, check out the lineup, subscribe to podcasts, and stay up to date on the latest station events. Get in touch with us and let us know if you like what you're hearing. And find out how you can support or get involved at the only community public radio station serving Nassau's North Shore. Plus, sign up to get a free bumper sticker. It's all online at WCWP.org.
Welcome back to Project Independence and You on LIU Public Radio. I'm your host, Kristina Liu, along with my co-host, Otto Los, and we're going to jump right back in with Gregg Balbera, owner and certified senior advisor at Right at Home, Nassau, Suffolk, all about long-distance caregiving, a checklist for holiday visits. And before the break, we were talking about hydration.
Sure, hydration, food management, and also med management. So, I mean,
How do you make people
sure.
from Seattle, Washington?
So obviously that's extremely challenging. If you're, if someone's living alone and they can't really, when people hire us, an in-home care assistance company, those are definitely some of the things that are at the top of the list that we do. So we have a full-time RN on staff. She can come and help the client pre-pour like a weekly pill pack. And then when the aides are there, they're reminding, hey, Jane Doe, it's time to take this with breakfast, this with lunch, this with dinner. So keeping them on track. Also, our caregivers provide and prepare healthy meals, because oftentimes you want to be taking your medications with meals.
Right.
They're probably, most, some, not all, but most are better when taken with meals as opposed to on an empty stomach. The other thing that our aides can do is, obviously they can go through that refrigerator, make sure that nothing in there is spoiled. Our aides drive so they can take the client shopping, food shopping, if that's something that they're still capable of doing. We always try and encourage our clients to be as independent as possible. Yeah. So maybe they can't still do the food shopping on their own, but we can bring them. So if they're walking the aisles of the supermarket and they're making those decisions, picking the things that they like to eat, what they want to eat, it gives them that sense of that they're still kind of in charge of their independence. And I think that's, super important.
Yeah, I'm sorry, but what I think it comes down to is if you don't have another pair of hands on site to check on, are they, like you left them with 14 bottles of water and there's 13 and a half left.
Yeah.
Or the pill box has still got a lot of pills in it. Or maybe they just dumped it, like I had an aunt who used to put them into a flower pot. We found that out after she died. A lot of the pills were just, you need another pair of hands.
Yeah.
Sure.
Reality. You can't just count on that person.
So there are services today like Peapod and all these food delivery systems also. So for clients who can't get out or go to the supermarket, we can help the family and help them coordinate, arrange the delivery of food. And then one of the things that our aides will do is, they'll bring the food in, they'll stock the fridge, they'll stock the pantry. And again, they'll remove the items that are expired or spoiled so that, no one is eating something that's going to put them at a health risk. So I think
and there's Meals on Wheels, is huge. And
but all of this has to be managed by somebody.
I know, you're right. No.
Maybe not the client.
Well, so the good thing is if you're in North Hempstead, right, you can give Project Independence a call.
Yeah.
They're the initial, and I think that that's a real true blessing for all of our residents here, that they have that initial, and then we're able to connect you to an agency, like a Right at Home or Meals on Wheels or, whatever you're needing, because you do need that initial point of contact, and what is good, we always say that technology brings a lot of benefits, and, of course there's these scarier things, but, as far as medication management, I know now there's just so many different kind of alerts that you could set up, and with Alexa, I mean, there's so many things you can do right now, like that I think it's the admin takes time, but I think once you kind of get it set up, you're able to do as best as you can with it.
I think that's the point, though. You have to have it set up. Otherwise, if you're counting on the person who has the problem to manage all this, it may not.
And it's
happen.
not even like with the problem. I'll use my mom as an example, is fully capable, drives, she's an independent woman, but, is, has a lot going on, and she's got some medical stuff. And, I can't tell you how often she says to me, oh, I forgot to take my pills today. And this is a woman who doesn't have any cognitive thing. It's just life gets to her, and she, so it really is hard. You need to. So we try to set up all these different reminders that she, can check off.
And your iPhone has an app, so you can actually write on your iPhone. I'm sure I don't have an Android, but I'm sure you probably can do that on an Android phone also. But on an iPhone, you can go in, you can put in the medications, the number of times a day, the dosing. So it'll pop up, if they're supposed to take something at 9 a.m. or noon.
Because I think that it's so important to have those kind of reminder things set up, because life does get to you.
Alexa a lot of times as an example of a system that can be set up to say, okay, Kristina, it's time to take, pill number 14.
I like that we jumped to bill number 14.
Well, I mean, sometimes people end up with 14
No,
bills.
I know. And it's overwhelming. And I think that that's what's important. You don't need to have some kind of cognitive issue to, it's hard to manage your medicine, when life gets involved and you sleep late or, you get a phone call, it's easy to, forget to do those things. But I think it goes back to,
How
the
about
planning.
a mundane matter like paying bills?
Yeah.
That's a great topic, actually. Finances, that's
Yeah.
another thing. Oftentimes when people come home, again, using the example, they're only coming home once, twice a year, come home around, Thanksgiving, Christmas time. And mom and dad always were taking care of the bills in the mail, and then you walk in and you see on the kitchen table just the mail piled high, or we'll get a call that, hey, I'm calling you, I'm from Seattle, California, Chicago, wherever. I'm calling you because, my dad, who was fastidious about paying the bills, just had his electric turned off because he hadn't paid the bill in 3 months, and that never happened to him. So now they know something's going on. So checking the mail. Today, it's quite easy to pay the bills electronically. So if you
In
have
Seattle.
That's the best part. Yeah, right.
so if you have a power of attorney, go with your parents to a bank, get yourself put on that account. You can electronically, you can kind of monitor what's going on. You can also set up automatic bill payment where necessary. So those are great tools as well.
Yeah.
And there's also companies out there that you can pay to pay seniors' bills if they're past the point where they can't really manage that anymore. Also,
I mean, there's a couple nonprofits out here, I think, that had support for paying bills.
Yeah. Well, that's the high cap program, the Family and Children's Association.
Right,
They're
right.
able to have some kind of, help you. But I do think that is such a blessing, is that we're in a time where you can have these automatic payments or log in. I mean, I do that for my dad because he's certainly not tech savvy. So to manage certain accounts and stuff. So
Well, you can, I could see if you're in Seattle, basically through email and through the internet and whatnot, you really could take over managing their financial world, and they don't have to be involved at all.
Right.
If the person allows that to happen.
Yeah.
They may be
Right, but I think
nervous.
that goes back into, your planning, as we mentioned, setting up your power of attorney, your healthcare proxy, all these kind of things.
That,
are
and I believe every family has its own dynamics, if you will.
That's a very polite way to say that.
Well, and the trust.
You'd be surprised what an issue that is.
Yeah.
As you can imagine, again, so we've had many examples where we are dealing with the client, and then there might be one or two family members that are local, and then there are the other family members that are not local.
Yeah,
And so a lot of times the family member that's local, that's doing a lot of that stuff, picking them up, taking them to the doctors, coming to the house, cleaning, maybe helping them with whatever. Now, all of a sudden, the son or the daughter who only comes in once a week is kind of viewed as, once a year, I should say, at around the holiday time. They fly in, and it's almost like a helicopter parent situation. Like the patient, the client will think, okay, this is the greatest person in my life. They're coming to see me at Christmas time.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, that the
52 weeks a year.
Yeah,
the
the
person doing
person
all
who-
the work is kind of getting crapped on, for lack of a better phrase. And it creates a lot of animosity between family members.
I think you just made it the plot of a really good holiday movie. It could be a comedy, a little drama. I think
Well, I could tell you a lot of stories about family dynamics, hopefully not my own so much, but I've seen a lot of families that have some dynamics that are pretty complicated. And the trust factor is not there. And a lot of that goes back to how people maybe were raised, or, the whole, it's just family dynamics.
And I think the holiday time, really, it's such a good point that you made, really heightens and brings it out, because, it's bringing all these different people who have different levels of involvement, together.
You know what
which is
I think
One of
it
the
is?
big-
Family dynamics from a long time ago becomes the bigger issue much later in life.
It's one of the biggest things we deal with. You would think the biggest part of our job sometimes is dealing with the client themselves and their care plan, but we actually spend quite a bit of time dealing with the family and the dynamics, and almost sometimes mediating between the different family members because they're not able to do that themselves. But
I've been there. I was an executor at a will where two brothers were having a fist fight. Lawyer and I had to break it up in the final closing. Yeah,
Yeah, it's definitely.
stuff happens.
one other thing I wanted to mention for the what to watch for during a visit if you're coming back is home safety and comfort.
Yeah.
Again, you haven't seen your parents' house in 6 months or a year, and again, perhaps they were completely fastidious, and now the house is in disarray, it's messy, things are piled up where that stuff was never happening before. That's a big sign. Clean and orderly house, no longer clean and orderly. That's definitely something to look for. Looking for safety hazards, loose rugs, lighting that maybe isn't working. You mentioned plumbing before. Maybe something is all of a sudden a toilet's not working.
Yeah, right.
So things like that you can check on. And then sometimes you have to make a decision. Maybe now is a good time for some adaptive equipment, grab rails or ramps if the patient's now using a walker or a wheelchair, to make it easier for them to get in and out of the house. We don't want them to be stuck in the house all the time. Stair lifts, a great opportunity to maybe use that as an opportunity for someone to access, multi-levels of the floor, so they're not stuck on one level of the floor. Because, to be honest, if you're confined to one level of the floor, that can kind of lead to some depression or some mental issues. So, little things like that can, eradicate some other bigger problems.
And that goes back to what we talk about a lot of times, pre-planning also. Like we recently had a walk-in shower put in on the first floor. Well, fortunately, we both could get into a shower that wasn't like that. But
I think there could be a time
we also
where it's
had
harder.
the experience when my wife had a knee replacement that she couldn't do that. So we decided, let's bite the bullet and do it. Go back to the main level living idea.
No, and the grab bars, and I've said it before on this show, I am such a proponent in grab bars. We are lucky to be partnered with Rebuilding Together Long Island and in our program, and who will install grab bars for you, because I know with my grandfather, it made such a huge difference, because it still was allowing him to, he was still able to get up, but had struggled. So we, in his bed, we said, all right, let's play it out. How would you get up, out of the bed? Would you grab this way? Would you grab that way? All right, we're going to put a grab bar over here, a grab bar over here, and it's really, it's giving you safety, but still maintaining your independence that you're able to do those things.
Well, it makes me think about a lady we had on a show who was 100 years old.
Yes.
And she had a PT person come into the house. And the first thing she wanted was for this person to take her to every room and show her how she should get up if she fell in that room. Yeah. What should she do? Pretty good idea.
Yeah, it is.
And she did learn. The other thing that leads to is like people sometimes when they get into situations, their personal care, their hygiene becomes an issue. Any ideas there how you can make sure, or not make sure, you can never make sure, but try to encourage.
Sure, well, certainly you can encourage. I mean, I think that's certainly a situation where in-home care, like we provide it right at home, becomes essential. At a minimum, you really want to see someone, bathing or showering at least 3 times a week. Anything less than that, just the cleanliness factor and the hygiene factor just really kind of degrades pretty quickly, especially for people, and we've talked about this before, people who have cognitive decline are at significant risk of getting UTIs, which, in and of themselves are fairly simple to clear up with antibiotics. But what we see with cognitive decline is people generally, it's not a straight line down. It's more of a plateau. You're on a plateau for 6, 9, 12 months. Then there's a little bit of a decline. Then you're at a new plateau for, again, 6, 9, 12 months. However, with UTIs, the decline tends to become much quicker. So if we can avoid those UTIs, we can slow the progression of the disease. So, ensuring that someone is showering properly. And showering means not just stepping in to the shower, turning the water on, right? There needs to be soap. People need to actually be washing themselves. So that can be standby assistance. That can be just us or our aides encouraging people to, or saying, hey, it's Monday, we shower on Monday, Wednesday, Friday. Let's get in, make sure you use the soap, the shampoo, wash yourself in the right places properly, to actually providing hands-on care where the aide is actually physically washing the person.
The reason I'm smiling is I just heard a story about UTIs, as a matter of fact, where the symptoms that typically somebody has don't show up, but it shows up in the blood test that they have a UTI, but they don't have the UTI with all the symptoms that people typically have, which could be because of that. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, it's so many factors. But I think,
know.
having these adaptive equipment, the grab bars, the shower chairs, can go a long way if you can't stand in the shower. So I think it's, there's little things that can be done, and I always say this, that could really make or break and make life easier that you wouldn't even think of. So I think it's, important to kind of check those things. And it's tough, the hygiene piece, working in the field is certainly something that's a difficult kind of thing to navigate. But on that note, we are going to take another break. We're going to continue talking with Gregg Balbera, owner and certified senior advisor right at home, Nassau, Suffolk, about long-distance caregiving, a checklist for holiday visits. You're listening to Project Independence and You on LIU Public Radio.
Take WCWP with you wherever you go with the WCWP app. Listen live 24/7 to all of our streams, all from one app. Plus, call the studios directly from the app and visit our social media. Download the app through the iOS App Store on Apple devices or the Google Play Store on Android by searching WCWP Radio, or visit WCWP.org for links. The WCWP app, available now on iOS and Android devices.
Welcome back to Project Independence and You on LIU Public Radio. I'm your host, Kristina Liu, along with my co-host, Otto Los. We're jumping back in with Gregg Balbera, who is the owner and certified senior advisor at Right at Home, Nassau, Suffolk, all about long-distance caregiving, a checklist for holiday visits. So we hit a bunch of things, and of course, there's the mental health piece that is just a big part of the puzzle with everything.
You got it. So I would say that, when someone is coming home for a visit and they haven't been home for a while, one of the things you definitely want to look for are changes in behavior. Look for signs of withdrawal, sadness, significant changes in mood, behavior. Did your loved one have a hobby that they're no longer participating in, or the activities that they're no longer doing? Any type of withdrawal is a good indication that something is amiss and needs to be addressed. Same thing with social connections. Are they not going out with friends that they were previously going? Were they normally playing cards or mahjong, and they're not taking advantage of that? Have they stopped going to library, senior programming? Again, these are all flashing warning signs that something is amiss and definitely should be
And maybe
should be
they're
addressed.
doing that because they can't drive the car.
Yep,
That's another topic.
Yeah.
Which is, again, something that Right at Home certainly provides. Our aides all drive, so we can make sure that, our clients get to errands and activities, doctor's appointments, so we can certainly, keep that going if they're having
and
trouble.
it's one of these things too. I was think, with our seniors is, these situations, you're lucky to have family, even if they're long distance. And then I think about the seniors who just really have no one, and I think in that case, hopefully they're part of some kind of, senior group or a religious organization, because there's so many times that we'll get calls from someone who will say, my friend, Mrs. Smith, she hasn't been showing up. She used to come every week, So I think also, I just want everyone listening, just remember, to be a good neighbor, and to kind of clock these things, because a lot of people don't have the luxury of having a family member who's going to, check in. So,
Well,
think
that
it's-
came up on a show, is you can actually call somebody like Project Independence and have what is it called, a well check?
yeah. So the police, and then we
Yeah, well, you can
will
call
contact the
and
police,
make
and they'll,
sure.
go
wellness
over and do a
check.
wellness
Yeah.
check.
Yeah.
So it is, I think, that's just a little thing just to, keep out. I know everyone's got busy lives and their own thing, but, to clock these things and to tell someone, because a lot of times that's, the only way to reach out.
So we kind of talked about coming into the trip. I think it's important to now
Right, what
talk
happens
about,
next?
after the holiday, how to help from afar. So I think, kind of, again, a checklist, but checking that off would be starting with a planning regular check-ins. And that can be you yourself, maybe talking, as you just mentioned, maybe there's a neighbor that, your loved one has a relationship with, and you can ask them to, hey, once a week, once a month, if you could just check in. Zoom or FaceTime these days are great ways to kind of stay in contact with a loved one. I know technology can be an issue sometimes for older people. So if you can if they're capable of doing that, if you can teach them how to simply accept a FaceTime call or a Zoom call, that's a way to kind of keep eyes on your loved one. Using technology, So pill dispensers or getting meds, you can get like your meds for a week or for a month can be pre-packed, so your loved one doesn't have to worry about dispensing things from a vial if they're by themselves or they don't have a nurse like we have it right at home who can come and dispense the meds into a weekly or a bi-weekly pill pack. That's definitely important. One of the last times I was on the show with you, we talked about we are using a product now called Sensi.
Yeah, right.
It's a AI-driven audio pod. And basically over the course of a week, it will build what's normal behavior for our client. And if something out of the normal happens, we will get an alert. So it could be a notification if there's a potential UTI. If someone normally goes to the bathroom 5 times, if they've gone to the bathroom 15 times, something's not normal, we'll get an alert. If there's a fall, we'll get alert. If they say something that seems out of the ordinary, we can get high-level alerts. So there's lots of technology that can be utilized.
How would, like, if I want to find out more about that, I'm thinking you could go to your website.
Sure. So obviously, anyone can always call us. We have a Nassau and a Suffolk phone number. You can reach us at 516-719-5999 or 631-352-0022. We're always happy to discuss not just home care, but we're a great resource for many different things that we don't provide ourselves. So we're happy to lead people in the right direction, whatever it might be. And again, our website is www.rightRightHomeli.com. On there, we have hundreds and hundreds of blogs. We have
and I have to say, I
checklists.
say it all the time, it's such a resource. I think you guys do such a good job on the website because it really, I know even for myself being there, like I will check there often, for a tool, and they're very clear, it's easy to navigate, so, and it's all free services, that you're able to get and information that is helpful, so.
And many of that stuff is also linked on our social media, so you can find Right at Home Nassau Suffolk on LinkedIn, on Facebook, on Instagram. So a lot of the stuff that we are posting on our website is linked to social media if that's someone's preferred method of getting information, that we're reachable that way as well.
That's great. Yeah, because these, this is, we touched upon in the previous break is, with technology, and AI, you hear all these like scary things, but like something like that, I think it's only going to progress in a helpful way, especially if someone needs, more eyes on them, certainly because of whatever issues are going through.
Something just sunk into my head here is the idea that we talked offline a little bit about family dynamics, all right? And the fact that maybe one person in the family gets a heavier load than some of the other people in the family. When there's family, maybe there's not family. So I think the point to me is the need to establish a caregiving team. Who are the players and who try to work together as the unit, as a team to support this person. And I think communications, again, becomes a critical factor.
Essential.
And you need to identify, okay, here's our team, and we'll work together. We're not going to have like, I live in where, and I'm only coming in here once in a while. I think the need to communicate about making it a unit is for the betterment of the person who you're trying to take care of.
Absolutely. So one of the things that, my wife and I obviously run the agency, but again, we have a full-time RN, we have a full-time social worker. So as we're often talking to these different family members, dynamics, especially around holiday gathering season, we're trying to help them realize they need to reduce the stress and the anger, which is often pent up and built up, and trying to get them to say, all right, we understand there's stress, there's anger. You kind of have to, let's try and look past that. Let's try and work with these family members as best as possible. And as difficult as it might be, try not to bring that up, but let's try and focus on your loved one. Let's come up with a plan. And sometimes if you can just focus on the needs of your mom, your dad, your aunt, your uncle, your grandparent, perhaps maybe you can kind of come to that meeting point, that central ground where you can come up with
come up with a joint plan,
the care plan or the emergency plan, if that's really what's needed, or both, so that you guys can move forward.
I'm thinking of my own world. I mean, I have fortunately kids that are good.
Yeah.
They're not kids, they're adults. They were kids once. So was I. I always tell my grandchildren, we're off the track altogether.
We call them the sandwich generation these days, right? Because they're
Yeah,
sandwiched
right.
right in between. Oftentimes, those are the people now that are taking care of their parents
Yeah.
and their own kids.
Yeah, but even there, the need to make sure that everybody understands where my view would be that where they would fit. You take care of me if I have a health problem. You can take care of, financial, you power of attorney, whatever.
No, see, in Otto, what you do, I mean, if every senior would be like Otto, I think we'd really be in great shape. We say this all the time, but I think that that's so important. And it's a very difficult thing to convey. I've laughed about my grandpa in the past because when he was alive, he was not the guy who wanted to ever relinquish control. And we try to explain to him so often is that, what Otto just said, you're giving yourself the autonomy, the control still, because you're calling the shots at this point. You're saying, listen, I want you to be in charge of my finances. Like everyone has different strengths. So it's a benefit to you to actually say that, not when, God forbid, some kind of emergency happens and you can't make those choices.
That goes back again to the caregiving team idea that all of a sudden the person who was my caregiver winds up having problems of their own.
Right.
And they have dementia and they can't execute a will.
Yeah.
They can't take care of a healthcare proxy. They can't do power of attorney. And you didn't change any of it.
Yeah.
You got a mess.
Yeah.
And I think that's, one of the best reasons or examples of why going with an agency sometimes, besides the fact that our aides are bonded, insured, background check, drug tested. Also, we just have a team, right? My office staff is really overseeing, again, the nurse, the social worker, my schedulers, everybody, my wife and I, everyone, we're really overseeing the whole thing. And then, God forbid, if one of our caregivers gets sick, has a family emergency, gets into a car accident on the way to their shift with you, unlike when there's just one private caregiver, we have backup.
Yeah.
We're able to, we'll cover that shift instantaneously, basically, so that your loved one is not left alone.
Yeah, I mean, I one of the things we have to be honest about here, what you're talking about is not for free.
Right.
Yes.
This is a, what would I call it? It's not a social services situation.
Correct, it's privately paid,
right?
For sure.
And from what I understand, you talk about the care plan, and then you will talk about, okay, that would cost you this. And there's a lot of ways people can try to finance that.
Sure, people can pay with, but obviously with private funds. A great many of our clients have long-term care insurance. Most long-term care policies require a licensed or accredited agency, which we are. There's a lot of agencies out there that are not. So you have to be careful because they'll say that they are. So definitely do your homework. We provide concierge level service for our long-term care clients. We send in every week, we send in daily care notes and invoices. Oftentimes the LTC companies will require our nurse to go out and do an assessment, which we do for free for our clients. We have quite a few clients that are vets. So we take care of a great number of vets through our local VA here on Long Island. So there's different resources that are available to people, and we'll often try and help people realize what those sources of funds might be, just beyond private pay.
Yeah, I mean, and it's
so you have to plan, right? And I said you call Project Independence, and we're able to go through with you. Whether it is a right at home,
yeah, you're going to know what it will cost
right
before anything gets done.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's tough, right?
Yeah.
It's not an easy world to navigate, certainly.
Well, we know that.
Yeah, it's just.
The more years we do this, the more years I realize how complicated it is.
I thought it would get easier. Now I realize all the things I need to.
I mean, I've been, people know that I've been involved with this thing for a while. So there is an occasional time where a conversation will come up about something, like the sundown thing or whatever. And then I sit there and I look and I say, I really don't know. I think I know, but I'm not dealing with this every day, all day. I don't have this full time like you guys experience handling things like this.
So the sundowning itself, I mean, we could talk about sundowning for 6 hours, to be perfectly honest. I could come back and do sundowning, multiple times, but there are definitely things that we can do, just so you know, to mitigate sundowning. Sometimes that's the temperature in the house, so making sure that especially these days with like the Nest or different thermostats, making sure that the house has a temperature that is either maintained, or sometimes you need to tweak it up or down a degree. Sometimes it's lighting, especially now, since we set the clocks back and the day is getting we're getting darker earlier. Sometimes when at let's say 4:30, you want to increase the lighting in the house, because if the house starts to get darker, that creates a time where maybe the person is remembering when they used to come home from work, and that triggers certain things. So lighting is super important. Music can be a really big factor in sundowning. So if there's certain music that that the person who's sundowning really likes or loves, put that music on. If you have a Sonos phone system, audio system in your house, or even if you just have one of these Bluetooth speakers, you could put music on. Frank Sinatra.
Do you have this recapped anywhere?
I have links on on the website where you can see about sundowning for sure. We have quite a few blogs, and there's quite a few tips.
No, because it's incredible, because you wouldn't think that all these things, can help, resolve some of the the situations, certainly. And what's great about this are all those things you hit upon are things that you're able to kind of control from not being in the house, which is really, really good.
Yeah, listen, like we talked about the Nest.
Yeah.
So if you live in California, you can have that Nest on your phone, so you can control that for your parents. If you have a Sonos phone system, or even like an Alexa, you can control that, so you can play certain music for your for your parents, even though you might not be in the home. So so utilizing the technology in different or unexpected ways is extremely important.
Yeah, that's really.
I use Alexa for my alarm.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, and that's in a very user-friendly type of thing, like an Alexa, and I think that's why they talk about that a lot, with seniors, is because, you're able to kind of, do it. It's not too complicated, which is really nice. But I do think that all these, to invest in, I even think of my Christmas lights. I was laughing at my husband. I said, I remember when we first moved into our house, I'm running around, hitting all the extension cords and stuff. And, now I could be at work and my husband's like, all right, turn the Christmas lights on. And boom, it's magic, which is fun. He goes, why do you put it on a timer? I said, because I I have a magic wand. I just,
Well, you
did
need
that.
a smart plug.
Yeah, but it's, it's like little, and these things don't cost it didn't cost me a lot to, use those things. And, there's certainly different levels,
Well,
but.
talked about safety. I'm an older person. I have mobility issues. The light is out there somewhere. I can just shout out, Alexa, shut the light off in the living room. And it'll be shut off without getting out of the chair, walking to there if that's an issue.
Yeah, and there's even if we're talking little motion lights, that you can get on Amazon for
But the
very
flip side
inexpensive.
is I can see where it could be overwhelming.
Of
Like I'm
course.
just going through,
Right.
and I'm pretty technologically up to speed. I'm now going through this thing with a television.
Yeah.
All right. Television is no longer just television.
This is really Otto's plight on this one. I knew it was going to come up. Dan is
It's got
laughing behind the
400
scenes.
400 settings. It's like I'm looking at this thing. I had one before. I had a smart TV. I got a new one, and it's like, man, this is like I'm going to have to hire somebody.
Yeah, well, that's why they have these, it's important to reach, because it is overwhelming, right? There's so many wonderful benefits,
But they're hard to
but
use.
unless you're someone who is able to, so it's certainly a difficult world to. So
I would also say that we have to be careful that we don't overuse the technology
Right.
to be a crutch, right? Because you mentioned the example of someone who's in a chair and can just say, turn off the light in the other room.
Yeah. They
Well,
are
now,
not
if that
trying.
person is not trying to get out of
Yeah.
the chair, if they're not walking, right? We're talking
a fine
Well,
line.
that's a
muscle
problem
memory.
too. Maybe
Yeah.
you want them to get out of the
Yeah.
chair.
Exactly.
No,
So
it's a fine
we,
line.
there's a fine line of what's the right amount of.
That's a good point,
Yes
because
and no
that
there.
could be the better exercise of the day.
Yeah,
Right.
right.
And that's reality.
It is.
A lot of times people sitting in a chair all day.
Yeah.
And if they don't get up and move a little bit, that's a problem.
No doubt.
It is, and it's complicated, needless to say. But Gregg, you really always give us such wonderful tips, and I want everyone that's listening, all of our caregivers out there, whether you're a friend or the senior themselves, these are just really a great tool and checklist. And once again, you should certainly check out the Right at Home Long Island website for all these wonderful, wonderful resources. Greg, give us your phone number one more time.
You got it. So you can reach us at Right at Home at 516-719-5999 or 631-352-0022. And again, the website is www.rightathomeli.com. And as always, thank you for having me. I definitely want to wish everybody a happy holiday season, and definitely stay safe.
Right, and just keep these things back. We don't want anyone to get too overwhelmed, but it's good little things to keep in the back of your mind. But I would like to thank our guest today, Gregg Balbera, owner and certified senior advisor, Right at Home, Nassau, Suffolk. We would also like to thank everyone today who has joined us. You're listening to Project Independence and You on LIU Public Radio. Thank you again.